Hey guys, welcome back to Home Built, and this week we are continuing to weld together all the bits. Finally! Yay! So those of you who were watching last week will have seen that I got the sills and everything all welded on, so they're all ready to go now. It's time to move forward, and last week I fit all the rear panels on again just to make sure everything was still in the right spot. Now that there's solid structure there, it's time to move forward now, fit the doors, make sure they all line up nicely, and then I can start looking at what I'm going to do about welding the rear end onto the car. So I'm not going to be gung-ho with this. I'm going to take my time and obviously try and do it the most logical way and the best way I know how. And the way I'm thinking of doing moving forward is I'm going to take off this rear windscreen panel first, the rear window panel, sorry. And I've already marked around the edges of it. I'm going to trim the panel underneath and then mount it back on again and try and spot weld it and tack it together with the MIG, and then I'll do the rear panel and move my way around. So let's get into it. I'm going to remove the boot and remove this panel and start trimming things up, getting ready to weld. Finally, yay! So now that I've gone through and cut out the spaces so that I can butt weld these panels together, the issues I'm just having is because this window panel was sitting on top of the other panels, when you cut it down, the lines are not perfectly the same because there's that error, obviously, with the with the height. So as it comes in, they might get a little bit tighter in spots, a little bit further away in spots. So I'm just going around now and adjusting and getting it so that everything still lines up beautifully on the car. So I've screwed this panel back in, but now obviously it's sitting a little bit lower and flatter onto the car. So I just need to readjust and remark my edges and keep trimming and adjusting until I get a nice tight fit all the way around, and then I can go around with the MIG and tack them together. Okay, so like everything else, it's taken a lot of time to line this all up perfectly, get it all exactly, a nice, neat, close, tight join all the way along that I can go through now and start cleaning it up, so then I can go through and start tacking it together. All right, the moment of truth has arrived. I have ground back all the edges, so now it's time to actually start going around and tacking the pieces together. Oh. All right, so this side came together quite well. So I've got quite a nice tight gap all the way along. I haven't welded this spot here because I can't get underneath to level out this area, so I'm just going to leave that for now. But I did much better on this side. I used the right temperature. I had it turned down too far on this side, and really didn't do a great job of it. There's a bigger gaps here than I would have liked, but it's just the way that it came together in the end. It's tight here, and again, I've left this section here because I can't get under to tidy it up, but it's tacked together. So now those bits are one piece, basically. Now it's time to start tacking together the rear panel. So bolt it up properly, make sure it's all perfectly aligned, mark it, cut it, and then start welding. So again, I'm happy with the alignment of the rear end. As you can see, I've taken the rear panel off. Now it's time to trim these up so I can butt weld them together. So again, we're all cleaned up. I've trimmed it back. Now it's all aligned, so it's time to start tacking it all together. Okay, well that's come out quite good actually. I'm quite happy with the result. The panels are nice and neatly aligned. There's a little bit on the bottom of each side that I need to probably weld an extra strip in. They don't quite meet up down the bottom there, and that's easy fix. I can do that afterwards. The bulk of the alignment is up here. Down there is just cosmetic. I'm not really too concerned. Last thing to do is to get the boot out now and mount the boot back onto the car and just make sure that it all lines up the way it's supposed to before this is all welded in for good. All right, I haven't really played with it, but the basic adjustment is good. There's playing that needs to be done, but that can be done later. I'm happy enough to move ahead now and strip this apart and weld it up. And one of the things that you probably weren't expecting, and I wasn't first expecting to do it, but after talking to Tim, our local alpha guru, showed me some books, and the factory actually used to weld all these panels on off of the car and then clip the whole shell back over again. It's going to take a little bit of finesse to get it off and get it back on, but that's the way they did it at the factory, and what it'll allow me to do is get in behind these spots along the edges here and panel beat it out as I weld it in so that I get this nice even gap, and it's nice and flat and flush and level, because at this stage I can't get to some of these places, and if I get any warping and stuff in there, it's going to be very difficult to get it all nice and neat and tidy. So time to strip this all back off again, but now in one big bit, and hopefully be able to weld the whole thing up together and make it completely one piece, ready to go back on the car. Well, that actually came off reasonably easily. It really wasn't that big a deal. Yeah, I didn't have to flex it too much at all to get it off. The hardest part was getting it over the top of the the two boot struts because they're spring loaded and they're still connected and they're all welded in. It's too hard to actually take them off. So it's just manipulating this over the top of them was the hardest bit, but basically it came off really easily. So now it is off, I can go through and work on this on the floor, and I can get to both sides of it all the way around the welds. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go around, I'm going to grind off the top of the MIG welds, and then I'm going to get the TIG out and hopefully TIG this all together and get it all nice and flat and even. And I'll take you a bit through it when I get there, but it'll be a bit of panel beating and a bit of TIGging to get it just nice, I hope. So you can see here we're nice and clean and level, we're all ready to go. So as I go around, I'm going to TIG weld this all together and panel beat as I go, because the TIG welding tends to shrink the metal. So what I'm going to do is get the dolly behind with a hammer on top, and when you hit hammer on dolly, so you wedge the steel between the dolly and the hammer, it squishes it and basically stretches it because it squishes out the sides. So that's a loose explanation of how it works. And so what I'm going to do is, as I go through, it will probably shrink a little bit, so I'm going to just hammer and dolly it just a little bit as I go, and see if I can get a nice, neat, clean weld on all these joints. And that is looking really good. I'm quite happy with my TIG welding now. I mean, it's not perfect. I'm far from a professional TIG welder, but that is definitely going to do the job. Once I give it a bit of just a light grind back, just to clean the surface up, and a little bit of panel beating just to get every little ripple out, it should be good. I am very happy with that. All right, that was a long day of welding, but we actually have the back end all welded together, all now one piece. I still have to finish off the lower corners. I'll probably come back to that with another strip of metal and the MIG. And I've got to grind it back and panel beat it and get it all perfectly flat now. It's not bad, but it needs to be just right, so there'll be a bit of work on that. But that is all the time I have for today, so that means it's time for Fun Facts with Mrs. Jeff.
Hey guys, in 1962, Alfa Romeo introduced this new flagship range in the 2600. This ended up being the last Alfa Romeo to be fitted with an inline twin-cam 6-cylinder. It was produced in 3 versions: the factory-produced 4-door Bellina, the 2+2 convertible by Touring, and the coupe by Bertone. And of course, there was also the rare Sprint Zagato. The sales of the Bellina suffered, however, because the styling was dated and its performance was lacking, especially compared to Alfa's smaller cars. The Sprint proved to be more popular with much more modern styling, and this was the first project of Giorgetto Giugiaro as head designer of Bertone. Giugiaro, of course, went on to become one of the most influential car designers in history, responsible for designs such as the Lotus Esprit, the BMW M1 and the DeLorean, to name a few. By the end of the model in 1968, 2,000 Berliner, 7,000 Sprints and 2,200 Spiders were produced. There were 105 Sprint Zagatos produced, and they remain today by far the most valuable cars of the range.
All right, that's quite exciting. I actually got quite a good amount done today, getting the whole back end being together as one piece. Obviously, next week I have to clean up all the welds. There's a few bits I've got to finish off and panel beat and get it all nice and straight before I actually weld it onto the car. It's much easier to panel beat it like it is now off the car. I can get to all of it, get inside, so I should be able to tidy it up. Fingers crossed, get it nice and neat and straight, and needing as absolutely minimal filler as possible. I wanted to do this car with zero filler at all. I'm realising that that's probably unrealistic because even the best top show cars still have like the most minor skim of filler on it, and that will probably be the same on this because I want to get this absolutely flawless. But it's coming along well. I am happy. And
I admire your optimism.
Eternally optimistic, if not anything else.
Yep.
I did notice that the welding on that rear panel, the steel was much thinner than the sides, so it was quite difficult. I kept blowing through. It was a lot more difficult welding that rear panel on than it was the top skin. So it just it took a little bit more finesse than and I'm not as good with finesse. I'm better with a hammer than with a feather.
Hope you're enjoying the show. If you'd like to follow us a day early, please join us on Patron. And don't forget, t-shirts available for awesome Christmas presents.
Yes. And if you need any Alpha parts for any model of Alpha, go and check out alphapartsbyjeff.com.
Didn't you want to talk about the part you found? The Viking helmet part?
That's for my Porsche.
Oh.
But Porsche Parts by Jeff as well, if you've got Porsches. But yes, there was it's been quite useful. I've actually been using these sites, and they actually really work. So have a look, and if you've got suggestions, please leave them in the comments. All right, guys. Well, happy holidays, and see you on the next one.
Oh yeah, that's right. And the Coupe by Berliner. Got you. And about 2,200, 7,000 Spiders, Sprints. Okay. Shush! Stop!